All right, guys, so welcome to part two. Now, hopefully, what we did above didn't scare you off. This second question, a little bit easier, a little bit more, see more of a familiar friend there in terms of what we're dealing with. And so the derivation or the derivative is a little bit easier as a result too, okay? Um, so this overall, this question, we just want to we want to produce the graph, exact same question, but this time, instead of providing you with just one particular point that I was interested in, I want you to come up with, for this particular question, and you'll see it denoted like this, I want you to come up with the generalized equation for all of the tangents relative to this curve, okay? As opposed to finding one particular value, right? And if you guys were wondering what the difference was between these two boxes, that's exactly what it is. So here we're coming up with a general equation for the line, the slope of the tangent, an equation, whereas above the a value, a was a specific number, okay? And the number in this question would have been x equals minus 3. The problem with doing this is we have this runaround at the very end of trying to find the actual equation for the tangent so that we can use it, okay? So at least if you guys do it in a way that does not involve plugging in a number, and we saw this a little bit yesterday, where you don't plug in a specific number and do the derivation that way, like what we did. Remember, we plugged in a value of negative 3. If you don't do that, then you don't have to come up with this work afterwards, right? So if you evaluate everything in terms of x, then it will spit out this equation at the end by first principles. Okay, that's the difference between these two boxes. Okay, so first things first, though, how do we graph this, right? Hopefully this conversation goes a little bit faster. You guys have been doing this for years now, right? So what we can do, how do we graph a parabola? Well, we could do it a number of different ways, but just by just by looking at this, I'd say I see a 2 in front of, well, that a factor of 2 that I could pull out of all of these. So I'm going to rewrite this function. And you know what, guys? This is my bad. I'm not a fan of having this h of x. I've gotten questions from here somewhere. Why do I not like that? Because I evaluate things as h approaches 0. Okay, I'd rather have a function of f. Okay, so if you guys see questions, I'm okay if you just change the notation to like an f of x. Okay, because there's a lot. If you have multiple, there's already enough going on. We don't need duplicates of things. Okay, so what I want to do here is rewrite f of x with the negative 2 removed. So I'm going to remove the negative 2, and then I'm going to write what's left after I do that. Well, I get x squared plus 4x plus 3. Now, this is what we called a simple trinomial. You guys can factor that by finding two numbers that multiply to 3 and add to 4. Well, those two numbers that satisfy those conditions would be 1 and 3. So I could rewrite this. X plus 1 times x plus 3. What are what we call the zeros, the root solutions of this graph? X is at negative 1. X is equal to negative 3. Okay, those are your two, what we called x-intercepts. Okay, so we go down here, we can plot these 2 points, right? You guys know how to do this. We can go here. There's one of your x-intercepts. Here is those are your 2 x-intercepts. Okay, now how do we find what the maximum is, or we need a third point in order to produce the parabola, right? Because you guys, we do know for sure that it's opening down, but we don't know, is it how far stretched is it there? Is it way up here? Is it like way up here? We don't know this yet. We can find out. How would we find out? Well, that's no different than we're just interested in one particular point, and I have a function to tell me where it's basically a map of all the points. Well, we know that the maximum is going to occur right in between these two values. What is this value? What's that? X equals -2, right? So let's find the y value. F of -2 is equal to, just plug the values in, right? Negative 2 times -2 squared minus 8 times -2. I'm just going to move this over. Minus 6. If you do the math on that, you should see that you'll get +2, which means here's your parabola at 2. Okay, that's how you produce this graph, guys. There's just a parabola that's opening down. Now, let's go ahead now. We want to find an equation for a tangent, right? I'll do the tangent. We want one equation that does it all, right? So I want, I want the equation that represents a slope here. I want the equation that represents a slope here. I want the equation that represents a slope here. This will all be the same equation for the function. So right, obviously these are going to be different equations, but we're going to come up with the slope of the tangent for the entire graph that then we can use to plug in specific values of x that I'm interested in. Okay, sorry, well, that wasn't necessarily clear. Okay, so we can let's find the overall slope of the tangent equation. Okay, and then we can find the specific values of 0, 0, and 2, -2. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We know how to do that. That's from first principles, right? So we know that, f, and you guys have become masters of this, f prime of x is equal to the limit. Don't forget your limits. F of x plus h minus f of x divided by h. Okay, and let's find, well, this time f of x plus h, you're just going to replace all the x's with an x plus h. Okay, and we can do that probably, well, we could do some of the simplification work on the side if you'd like. Okay, so we can say f of x plus h is going to equal -2 x plus h squared minus 8x plus h minus 6. This helps me, guys. I don't know if it helps you or not. You could probably do it right into the equation. I've had some problems doing some of the homework questions that way. I find this organizes myself a lot better, right? -2 times x squared plus 2xh plus h squared minus 8x minus 8h minus 6, right? And then you can distribute the 2 in. This is just all work that you would end up doing here, which is, I don't know. I think it just makes things messy, -2x squared minus 4xh, minus 2h squared minus 8x minus 8h minus 6. Now, you look in there, and you start trying to see if, well, we can't do anything yet, actually. Okay, so this is your f of x plus h function. Okay, and then we do the same thing, but you already know what f of x is, right? So there's nothing to be done there. Okay, nothing crazy. So let's take these two things, right? We know what f of x plus h is. We're going to put it in there, and we're going to take f of x and we're going to put it in there. Okay, so let's do that. So we get f prime of x, the limit as h approaches 0, of, and here comes this huge long thing now, right? -2, I'm going to try and fit it all here. It's probably not going to fit though. Right, and don't forget, what am I going to do here? Hey, there we go. don't forget you got to subtract off, and this is where everybody gets messed up, minus this function. Okay, you have a minus minus. Okay, that affects things, right? You'll see. You should get something that starts canceling out terms, right? So f prime of x, I would say the more you go through each line, you should start losing terms, right? So all I'm going to do is distribute this negative into the three things there. And hopefully we should have more room here actually now. 2x squared minus 4xh minus 2h squared minus 8x minus 8h minus 6 plus 2x squared plus 8x plus 6, all divided by h. This negative, this double negative, is what I think trips everybody up when they're doing this. So you got to be careful. And I find that's probably why it's easiest to do all of this work on the outside and then put it back into the first principles. Okay, so now we can take a look here, right? If I'm just looking right away, I see a negative 2x squared and a plus 2x squared. That's creating a zero pair. Negative 8x with a positive 8x, that cancels as well. Negative 6 plus 6, which is a zero pair. Okay, and we're left with just three things that have h's in it, right? So negative 2h squared minus 4xh minus 8h, all divided by h. Now this is an ideal situation, right? Because now you guys can say, okay, I see that there's an h in all three terms in the numerator, right? Remember, the name of the game here is pretty much do whatever you can in the numerator so that you can cancel out the h in the denominator, right? That's pretty much the name of the game. So we're going to get an h out front now. Negative 2h minus 4x minus 8 over h. H's now cancel. You can evaluate this. When h approaches 0, the first term is going to cancel out because h approaches 0, and you're going to be left with negative 4x minus 8. Okay, so now that takes care of the first part. Now, if we want to find this is part A, number 2, right? Second part of part A. We want to just find what the slope is at the x value of 0, right? So f prime of 0 will equal negative 4 times 0 minus 8. Well, that's equal to negative 8. So f prime of 0 is negative 8. Right? And if we do the same thing for part 3 here, we want to find what the value is at negative 2. Well, let's do that. F prime of negative 2 is equal to negative 4 times negative 2 minus 8. Well, that's equal to 8 minus 8. 0. Well, what's that? That means that f prime negative 2. What does this mean? Let's go visit these things. What is this? When x is negative 2, the slope is 0. Does that make sense? Oh, of course it does. Look. The slope is that. It's 0, right? It's where like a ball would reach its maximum height. There'd be no slope at that vertex, right? Whereas the other one, if we look at when f is equal to 0, or sorry, x is equal to 0, it's quite steep here, right? How steep, you might say? Well, it's f prime of 0 equals 8. Sorry, negative 8. And that checks out too, right? You guys are looking at All right, -8 makes sense because the slope here looks negative. Right, the graph is going in the downward direction, so the slope better be negative. Okay, so hopefully this is like locking in. It's almost like a reinforcement that you have the right answers after you've done your first principles, right? You're checking particular slope values around what you know the graph was supposed to look like. Okay, so if I give you something that, like a quadratic, that you could very easily get an idea of like what's going on. You know right by looking at that, the a value is negative, it's opening down. You could do the quick factoring work and figure out where the x-intercepts might be. And then you know, generally, if your answers are going to make sense, right? You might know exactly, but you have an idea. Now, if I wanted to find the equation, so I'm going to bump on to part B here, right? I want to find the equation of the tangent with the slope 4. Okay, and we saw this yesterday as well. Okay, this is a very like reinforcement of yesterday, just to get everybody into the course, but also to refresh upon some of our graphing skills and use those graphing skills to make sure that our answers make sense. Okay, so let's just have a look here. So we want to find x when f prime of x is equal to, what do we say, 4. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, let's write out our equation here, right? We have f prime of x is equal to -4x minus 8. Well, we know, look, it told us that the slope is 4. So 4 equals -4x minus 8. So what are we doing? We're trying to find the equation where for the slope that is 4, right? And so we can say, okay, well, 4 plus 8 is equal to -4x. So we get 12 is equal to -4x. So x is equal to -3. Now, we now know that when x equals -3, the slope is 4. Where is this point? Oh, I suppose we're trying to solve for the equation. Sorry, we're not interested in the point. We're interested in the equation of the tangent. Okay. Oh, sorry, we are interested in it. We need the point. Sorry, one sec. I'm ahead of myself. Not really ahead of myself, but we need to find, sorry, you guys know, in order to find any equation of any line, I won't write it in function notation. We need y equals mx plus b. You guys know x, you know m. We're interested in finding b. We need the y. I was correct in the first place, sorry. What I was trying to do. Okay, so how do I find the y? Well, we can find what y is on the original graph when I plug in -3. Okay, well, turns out we already know what the value is at -3 on the original graph. It's 0. It actually is one of our x-intercepts. Okay, if you were to plug in -3 into the x values of the equation, you would get 0. Right, so now you guys can say, okay, 0 equals, the slope was 4 times the x value was -3 plus b. Right, so we get 0 equals -12 plus b, so b is equal to 12. What's our final equation for this? Well, we get y equals 4x plus 12. That is the equation of the tangent. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to draw this in red. So the equation of the tangent, or the line that goes through that point that represents the slope, y equals, I suppose I'll put arrowheads on there, y equals 4x plus 12. Okay, so that's it, guys. That's how we find a generalized uh, tangent, I suppose, or the slope. We find like an expression that represents the slope around the entire curve or function or whatever it is that you're dealing with, right? And then from there, we can find the specific slope values and their appropriate equations using that generalized expression, f prime of x, that we got from the limit of finding, or like the derivative. And then we can find equations of all of the tangents around that curve, okay? So that's it, okay? So hopefully that makes a nice connection, hopefully. You know, it makes a connection between what we did yesterday and what you've done in the past, okay, in other courses, okay? Today's question is very similar. You'll see that this lesson's questions are very similar from the standpoint of like they're asking you to do the same thing pretty much as yesterday. I did find that these questions are a little bit more challenging today, okay? So you can have a go at those. 7, 8, and 9 are going to be the important ones from the standpoint of they're going to ask you to do something similar to question 2 here, okay? And it's ask you different things relative to your result from the original, sorry. They're going to ask you to do different things with this equation, f prime of x, like much like what we did here, okay? So you can use this video to help you with those 7, 8, 9, those questions, or even some of 6, it looks like, okay? But the first 3, I tried to minimize the amount of limit questions that you guys had to do, so just try, it looks like there's 5 limit questions there, and then you guys can try 6, 7, 8, and 9, okay? And I'll post this afternoon's lesson. I'll get on that now, and you guys have a good day, and let me know if you have any questions, okay?